Do not adjust your radio dial. You are tuned in to the Mark Order Podcast. Join the Mark Order.
It's Wednesday night. By God, it's AEW Dynamite tonight. The big return of Kenny Omega. We were off for a couple of weeks there. We had some holidays going on. We had Christmas Eve and New Year's. Christmas Eve and New Year's.
It was Christmas Eve and New Year's Day. No, it was Christmas Day and New Year's Day.
Christmas Day and New Year's Day. There you go. Falling on the weeks that we normally do this. So this was, I think, the longest we've gone. I don't think we've ever gone 2 weeks in a row. I don't think
we've ever taken a week off.
I don't think so. I don't think this grind. I think the only time that even in the history of the Mark Order that we took a week off was the Brody Lee tribute show, because it just felt like wrong and weird to review that as a wrestling show. But other than that, I don't think we've ever taken a full proper week off, but we're rested. We're coming in hot. I've got Ryan. I've got Joe. Fellas, how are you? I'm going to start with Joe because he's a gentleman.
I'm doing well. It's been a while. I feel like it's been a year. But here we are.
Been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. Thank you for saying that. So yeah, I was just telling Ryan I probably will miss part of next week's show, so it's okay.
Running from the grind. Just running from the grind constantly, but with me, he grinds so much you can probably find him on Grindr. That's how often this guy is grinding. He's the one who is here the most consistently. Just like if he grinds so much on the show that if he invented an app, it would be called Grindr. That's how hard he grinds. But
I thought his nickname was Mr. Friction.
I think it actually is. I think you're not wrong about that. But Ryan, how you doing? How was your holidays? What's cooking over there?
I swear to God, if a profile featuring me pops up on Grindr called Mr. Friction, I will be honored.
You should be. You should be by such a thing.
I am happy. It's been a while since I could.
So let's dig in right away, shall we?
Been a while.
I do. Normally we go over kind of like some news and notes for the weeks here, but we've been off a couple weeks, so I just want to jump right in. I just wanted to start talking about Kenny Omega's return here.
I'm fine starting with that. I do want to talk a little bit about the.
We'll talk about some other stuff. We'll talk about Hammerstein and World's End and such.
I meant more like just now everyone's on streaming services.
Yeah, well, we got a lot has happened. A lot has happened. I was surprised by how low the Netflix number was for Raw, but I also don't really give that much of a shit about numbers. It was also just a very, very boring episode. So as someone that had to review it starting at like 11:20 at night, that was not the most fun. But let's start with the hottest thing here. Let's talk about this Kenny Omega return. He comes back in the main event tonight. He came back at New Japan Pro Wrestling, at Wrestle Dynasty, wouldn't know this guy had 2 feet of his intestine missing. Wouldn't know he was out for 13 months. Didn't know he spent 4 months in a hospital. Unreal. Absolutely, absolutely unreal match with Gabe Kidd. Star-making performance there. Comes back to Dynamite tonight. Came back at the pay-per-view at World's End after Okada won the finals of the Continental Classic, kind of come out, give him his belt and acknowledge it. Not a word was said, just exchanged glances. Some people had differing opinions on whether his like proper return match should be on Dynamite, but I say let wrestlers do what they want, and I say there's no shame in him making Gabe Kidd a star to carry New Japan moving forward because they need it. But obviously a huge shot in the arm. And as I'm sitting there watching Gabe Kidd and Kenny Omega, and as I'm thinking about the possibilities of him back in AEW with this roster tonight, I am blown away to an almost sickening point of the depth of talent and in-ring acumen of this roster. It's absolutely insane. And that's not a shade at anybody else's roster. But when you think about the fact that you have Will Ospreay, Kenny Omega wrestling at the same time, Bryan Danielson will be coming back for whatever his post-retirement career looks like. You have Kyle Fletcher becoming the next Will Ospreay in the making. You have MJF, and then you just have guys like Roosh, like Brody King, like Bud Matthews.
Did you mention Okada?
Okada, sure. Like, I mean, it's endless. It's endless. My God, yeah, and that doesn't even include like Danny Garcia and whatever. Like, it's absolutely insane. I'm sure I'm leaving people out because it just keeps going and going and going. A huge shot in the arm. Anytime Kenny Omega is in wrestling, it's a better landscape for it. Not just for the wrestler that he is, which if you said he was the best wrestler in the world, I couldn't argue against that. I think someone put it really well this weekend watching Gabe Kidd, and Kenny said, as excellent as Will Ospreay is, and he is, there is still a bit of an artistic gap between Kenny and Will. And I think that'll continue to thrive with Will. I think that's going to come along because it wasn't always there for Kenny either. But I think him coming back in a time where we also have Will Ospreay, Kyle Fletcher, Will Ospreay, Kyle Fletcher, Okada, Bryan Danielson doing one-offs, the next generation of Danny Garcia, MJF, whatever. Like, it's an incredible roster, and I feel like the direction of tonight's show, feeling more in-ring focused, really puts a marriage of what that roster can do with the presentation that we got tonight. I'm so happy that Kenny's return. I'm going to start with Joe because he wasn't as riding high as we were about this episode. He certainly didn't hate it. It doesn't sound like, but he was not like OMG best Dynamite in months about it. Like I've been a little bit, but Kenny coming back. One, did you watch the match with Gabe Kidd and Kenny? And two, how are you feeling overall about the big return from Kenny by God Omega?
No, I didn't get to see the whole match between Gabe and Kenny. I saw a lot of the highlights, and it looked like a hell of a match, especially for Kenny's first match back. I think that's really set the tone for what we can expect from him. Tonight, yeah, I mean, with Kenny back, it's great. I think, AEW needs more star power more than ever right now, as, they're just now getting onto Max and trying to continue to evolve and grow the brand. But I mean, I wasn't thrilled with having him go back into the Callis thing again. And I understand it's kind of like there's a lot of stuff going on at the top of the card with the title picture and everything. And it just seems like a weird kind of transition feud to fall back on. But that's
sure.
my main gripe.
I think it's supposed to be almost unfinished businessy, but I can understand that. There's always like that debate. I think when you're out 13 months, you could certainly move on. I'm looking at the Don Callis family and seeing Takeshita, and I feel like that's a very interesting place to go. There's a lot of people that feel like the world title picture is struggling, and I agree with that. And just for like hotshot Kenny into that, just have somebody to throw in Moxley, have it be Kenny, have a healthy babyface Kenny world title run. Ryan, we'll throw it over to you. How are you feeling about Kenny's return? Are you into him kind of tying up loose ends with the Callis family? I kind of loved what we got at the end here with this Ospreay Kenny Omega stare down because it's so perfectly woven for that aspect of it, right? He had the feud with Will Ospreay and the Callis family. Now Will's on the other side of that. That are we friends or are we foe thing is really interesting. And Will and Kenny being on the same side of things, like arguably the two greatest active wrestlers in the world right now, certainly intrigues me. Were you intrigued by that?
So intrigued by the intriguing thing that intrigued you. Yes. So a couple things. Chat, feel free to throw us your opinion on tonight's show. I can see Tim McFall's already saying that he must enjoy it because he was saying that Joe was wrong. So there's that. I enjoyed tonight's show greatly. We'll talk about the individual segments, but I thought I had a nice flow. I wasn't with Joe on this one, but I enjoy everything, so I guess that's kind of a balanced out. Omega back is a lot of fun. I'm okay that he went to New Japan first, because I think, and if nothing else, the relationship has felt a little one-sided at times.
Sure.
And it's not, again, I don't care from a business perspective because not my business, but as a fan who wants to see talent continue to come back from there and then be able to go over there and it helped Anna Jay, it's helped Jungle Boy, it helped all of them who would go over there. So throwing them you get the Kenny Omega's big return isn't to make your star isn't the worst thing in the world, in my opinion. It's kind of a nice whatever, especially because how serious the situation was. It's not necessarily a bad thing that he comes back for such a momentous thing. I get the callous part of it. I understand I understand both sides of it. It is intriguing with him and Ospreay right there staring because it wasn't exactly friendly, but it was that
they both really hate those guys. That doesn't necessarily mean they like each other, which is what we're about to go on the journey of. Yeah,
they were such big rivals that it's like we know that we're competitive with each other. We don't hate each other, but we can't like each other because we're too competitive with one another. But I really hate Don Callis. So like, and if nothing else, when you bring a guy like Kenny back, you don't want to hold him back for the perfect story because it's a waste to not have him on your TV anytime he could be on your TV. I have a feeling he's just he was probably only able to come back now, so I don't think they've been holding on to him. So you know what? Throw him in the Don Callis story. You can't just explode other things you're doing just because he walked back in. So you have this natural story there. Then I'm okay. I enjoy it finishing because it kind of makes sense. Like Don Callis is a dick. He's going to walk out and make fun of you for being out for 13 months. He thinks he's riding high, and now here comes Kenny Omega back in the picture being like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You're not.
What intrigues me with Will, too, is the title that he had was that international title now held by Takeshita, who's in there, right? So if we're having, like, Takeshita mixed up with Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega, I'm not mad about that. Like, there could be some really fun work done. Yeah, and I think that's probably what we're going.
You have Kyle Fletcher and you have Takeshita, like two guys that could be made. And the nice thing is you can flip-flop who's feuding with who.
Yeah.
You can have Fletcher. You can't hear my fan, can you?
No, just you being the biggest fan.
I know. You can have, everyone thinks obviously that it's going to be Ospreay versus Fletcher. Just like that's the thing, but it's okay for a long time if you want to have like maybe Omega focus on Fletcher and have Ospreay focus back on Takeshita, like kind of almost like a little bit of a twist.
I certainly think it freshens up things for the Callis family, which desperately needed it tonight. How are both of you feeling? We'll flip back to Joe for this. I'm kind of mixed up on the world title picture. I don't think it's working. I actually think the things that they did more recently are the more interesting things. I don't think this is something that can sustain Darby Allin climbing Mount Everest. Like, I think it needs to go off of these guys sooner than later. Kenny does feel like the move. He would certainly have to make amends with the Elite to even out the sides there, right? Because they tried to kill him with his own diverticulitis, as my host Alex Pulowski said. They tried to kill him with his own diverticulitis. So I like the idea of like the Elite versus the Death Riders because they were both groups that tried to take over the show. And I think it could legitimize the Death Riders in a way if the Elite said, look, we were shitheads, but we were not like these guys. You know what I mean? I think that could be something that's very, very fun. We also saw them like shredding those plans backstage. So I don't know if that's all playing into this. I'm curious to see what you guys think about the world title picture, maybe flirting around with that. And also, it's not lost on me, Joe, that you didn't see the full match. Because what I realized on my timeline today was people that saw the match and people that didn't see the match that saw the segment seem to have splitting reactions in that way. And I don't know if that's because we saw like in real time that Kenny is the legend and came back in form and made a star out of Gabe Kidd. If it's like, oh, I bet he actually can do something with the guys in the Callis family, if that's just in our heads more, or if that was just a coincidence from what I'm seeing. But do you feel like the world title picture would be better with Kenny Omega holding the title? And are you in or out on the Death Riders kind of overall here?
I wouldn't hate the idea of Kenny being the one. And if we kind of pivoted to that instead of the Darby thing, I'm with you where there's way too much going on with the world title picture. And if a way to get away from that is to splinter off into other storylines, you have so many guys going after the belt, like Heyman and Jay White. If they split off and do their own thing, then cool, that's great. If that's what comes out of this, and then one guy just kind of comes to the top. But the Death Rider stuff needs some kind of freshening up, because I feel like the end of the match or end of the show tonight, Kane promo, Death Rider, not Death Rider, but when the Death Rider came out with, I'm blanking.
With Rated FTR?
Yeah, with Cope. The same thing. It's like they need something different with the Death Riders. I'm tired of seeing the numbers game. I'm tired of seeing them jump a guy and always have the upper hand.
It's Bloodline Light. And it was also weird to have a casino gauntlet match tonight whilst like Adam Copeland is coming out there already to challenge for the title, right? Like they're really bad at that. Sometimes they line up challengers for things that are being actively contended for. But Ryan, where are you on the Death Rider thing? You are normally more optimistic than the rest of us in wrestling world. Are you burnt out on the Death Riders? Do you think this could be salvaged? And do you think Kenny Omega's the guy? Should they just hotshot this and move on?
I don't want to necessarily say I'm burnt out, but I think how do I want to say this? There was a promise to this storyline when it started. Not like obviously given, but in terms of what we all thought it could be, where this was going to be one of those. It's actually happened twice in a row now.
Yeah.
You had it with the Elite where they beat up Tony Khan, and then now you've had it with the Death Rider where they promised this story that's almost going to be all encompassing of the company, and then it just doesn't happen. They immediately they give you a couple weeks where you get that feeling, and then they almost immediately after shrink it back down to individual feuds, a couple guys here, a couple of guys there. And it just takes I don't think the storyline is necessarily bad. What I think the problem is people expected something different. And they didn't go in the direction that people wanted it to go. And not in a bad way.
Well, they also flat out said it. We're going to take over the Superstation. They do nothing, right? Like point over point. And you know what? So my frequent host, Alex Pulowski, really actually likes this, and he's the only person I know that likes it. And he saw a light at the end of the tunnel of the story that you then have to tell if Darby's your chosen guy, and you have everybody else, is all of the heels finally getting met with their match on the face side of like, okay, Darby's the guy who's going to fight Mox, and the rest of the locker room that's all faces are going to be the guys to knock off the rest of the Death Riders, who would then also have to employ more heels. And we're just not getting that story. But like that almost falls into line with like the Bloodline rules almost of, and that could work if it's Orange Cassidy and Jay White and Face Hangman and Swerve comes into the picture, but MJF's getting paid so he doesn't care and Wardlow's back on that side and whatever. Like if you have the locker room actually split about this and the faces just say Darby's the guy, but we have to protect all the circumstances around him, then you've got an umbrella story cooking. But to your point, then taking out the Rock and Roll Express, like, doesn't really do anything.
I mean, it was a funny image, but
it was, but like, cool.
So,
right.
So the thing about it is there's a story to be told where you have the Death Riders beating up anyone they see and basically taking over the company. And you have to be very careful how you do that, in the sense that you don't want to be just redoing things that were done 25, 30 years ago. Like you can't purely redo the NWO. You can't even purely redo DX when they would take over the TV booths and stuff like that. But like you can kind of tell a story where they're just making it hell for everyone. And there's a thing to be said, especially with how Mox was talking, where you have your pure baby faces. You have your Orange Cassidys, Darby kind of, Those are the big two on that. But then you have your middle of the road guys, Hangman, Switchblade, and there's a story to be told where those guys are so selfish they won't take the steps forward needed to stop the Death Riders, and you stretch that out over time until finally someone like a Darby or Orange Cassidy is the one to have stepped up. The problem is they've already wasted Orange Cassidy. He's already lost. And it looks like it's going to be Darby, but those guys, like Darby's going to be it. So I guess.
Like when, though? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the story's just not being told that way. It's, I'm looking at the chat and like you got Scott saying bench them. You got Timothy Drake saying TK just needs to give up on these big encompassing angles. And it's like, I agree.
Or do them well, yeah.
Or do them well, but apparently they do give up on them, and that's but instead of just giving up on them and just letting it go, they try to hang on to it a little bit, and it's just like.
Well, I will say with the Young Bucks one, I do know that got so snake bitten by injuries to the point where the entire other team was. So I found out that like FTR was playing for that angle, Dax got injured, Bryan Danielson wasn't injured per se, but was, I'm not kidding, I was told, laughed at when they said, we're not clearing you for blood and guts if you want to compete at Wembley. Like, there's absolutely no way we're clearing you in this condition for that. And Eddie, of course, getting injured too, right? But my whole thing with this story is, the problem for me is it's Eddie's story. I've been very vocal about that. Eddie's the one with the history with Mox. He's the one with the history with Claudio. He feels like a day one guy. You could pin it on him that he does have an ego problem because his mental health is contingent on the title. There's all these things that make it Eddie's story, and he's the person that could drag it out of Mox, and he's not available. Like, that is heartbreaking. That is so heartbreaking.
There's also a story where, again, it would rely on the Death Riders doing more damage than they're doing, which is part of the problem. They're not doing enough. Like they're very isolated in their story. But there's a story where you have the Young Bucks come, like, either could do it pre or post their return, but this is wrestling. You can easily have sent them on a vision quest where they refined like their heart and soul for whatever reason. And like they're the returning savior heroes. Like there is a great story there if you're willing to tell it. If among others, there's a bunch of good stories they're just not telling. That being said, and then Joe hasn't said anything for a few minutes. I'll let Joe talk. That being said, the one saving grace of the Death Rider storyline is everyone involved is so talented that the matches are always awesome.
That is true. That is very true. I will throw it back to Joe, but I'll throw you a couple more questions before we go to our break. One, just want your thoughts overall on the Hammerstein shows. It felt like that was a really good pivot back to kind of the storytelling direction that we're a little bit more used to with AEW, but also we've gotten these smaller venues that feel more intimate. They're much, much louder. The production is kicked up. Hammerstein also just looked good in the back. I felt like because it's a tiered venue, like the shots of it, I just thought looked awesome. Felt like it was a very successful weekend overall for the AEW ROH brands. And also we are now in the Max era. We've got Maximum Carnage coming up. We're in the simulcast era. I've had no problems with my streams. I think they've come across great. I love the look of everything. We've been seeing all these production changes in the lighting and all these things kicked up. Helps to have a little bit more budget, methinks. I think they were planning on maybe some of this. But what did you think of those Hammerstein shows? What do you think of being on Max and these production changes, and anything else that you didn't get to say about kind of our world title picture?
No, I thought the Hammerstein presentation was amazing. I thought it felt like AEW. It had the vibe of AEW when it first started. To me, It felt a little bit more, I don't want to say like super indie, but you just had that more raw feel to wrestling. So I love that. I hope that they almost make it kind of an annual thing where they kind of do this little holiday run of ROH and AEW shows at Hammerstein. I think that'd be great. And then the Max thing, I mean, I think it's what we're seeing is what we had hoped for so far. And I think I'll be interested to see what other original things they can put on Max where it comes to more original shows or content, and not just simulcast streaming, but more pay-per-views and more if we're going to do like not ROH, but there's TV program on there. That'd be great. Just to kind of see how that comes across.
Absolutely. Big G with the real question asking, will Ryan be doing a moratorium for the death of Rampage? Ryan, your thoughts on the streaming era and the Hammerstein shows, and also if there was any final words that you wanted to give to Rampage, though I know you don't have the same emotional attachment to it as you do to Dark.
So I don't have the same emotional attachment to Rampage that I do to Dark. Dark was my baby, and I killed it. Threw it off the side of the mountain, and just never
baby out with the bathwater, man. Just sad.
Yeah, hopefully they bring it back. Let Rampage die so that Dark can live. And again, I'll really quickly give an actual opinion on that, and then Rampage was great for the same reason I like Dark, but they were treated differently, which is Rampage gave breath to some storylines that otherwise didn't have a place on TV. And I really enjoyed that. There was a lot of people like Harley Cameron, who's now becoming a big time in the women's division. Rampage was her show. So like they're going to miss that. Well, Dark actually did that a little bit too. It gave some people, now you have ROH, but they don't seem to want to, I don't know what's going on there. So we'll ignore that first. We're just going to ignore that like they do. And say Dark gives you a place for people to get some quick storylines, but also just be characters that get over.
Yes.
And then those characters get over and you can bring them to the show, and it's all done. And plus, again, you get indie wrestlers that you've never met before. And I mean, as a person who there's not too many indies, but it's hard to find wrestlers when there's just so many options. This show was a cheat sheet for me to then go follow people.
A lot of people have said that it was like their entryway into discovering independent wrestlers. And we saw so many get signed either to AEW or NXT or go viral in certain moments, and it helped boost their careers in certain directions. So definitely with you on that. We do see you in the chat. We want to thank you so much for chatting along with us. Big G Pieces. Hi, Jesse Ozog. Lord Kev. I saw Greg Cherry in here before. Timothy Drake. Tim McFowle is not feeling well. We hope you feel a little bit better. But Scott George, Taylor Cannon, who's always so wonderful to us. So thank you for chatting along, Joe. It looked like you wanted to throw in 2 cents on that. I
was just thinking, it's kind of mind blowing that what we've seen from Rampage the last year or so. I mean, and that was the program that CM Punk came back to wrestling after 10 years.
Danielson was on that show too. Like a lot of the beginning of the Blackpool Combat Club got set up on there. I think they went from 2 hours to 5+ ROH hours very quickly. And I think that they maybe were a little ill prepared for it. I know Rampage was never supposed to be like anything more than what it ended up being. Like the original intention was this bonus of hour of fun matches. It's not going to be a storyline carryover show. That was never how it was supposed to be. I will say I'm concerned about my women's division because that was a place where stories got built. So I hope they find a new home for that.
I guess to be fair, a lot of stuff happened before we had Collision, right? So
that is true. That is very
kind of weird, like half Collision, half remnants of AEW Dark.
Yeah, it kind of was kind of an interesting amalgamation of those things. I will say it closed with some really good episodes, and I always get frustrated, and it happens at every wrestling promotion where I'm like, it feels like if you just choose to care more, you give us really great content. That drives me nuts. But I actually thought tonight's episode was a step away from not caring. I felt like tonight's episode was the Dynamite that we know and love. But Joe is going to be the negative Nancy tonight. All right. He's going to be the one who's hating over here while Ryan and I are both in the boat of that. This was a really fun episode. But before we get into any of that, we are going to play some commercials about some other great shows on the Shining Wizards Network. I was on the flagship show on Monday before they did an interview with Alec Price talking some Wrestle Kingdom and Wrestle Dynasty. So go support the Shining Wizards and some of the other fantastic shows here on the Shining Wizards Network.
Wow, you went quicker than I was expecting. So hold on. I got to put the commercial overlay up.
There it is.
Then I got to hit the commercial play
We'd like to
button.
thank each and every one of you for tuning in every Monday night to listen to The Shining Wizards. If you'd like to continue to support us outside of listening, we've got a few ways for you to do that. If you shop at Amazon, go over to amazon.shiningwizards.com, do your shopping as usual, and when you make your purchase, a little bit of that purchase price will go back to support the show. If you like to wear t-shirts, merch.shiningwizards.com will take you to our Pro Wrestling Tees store, where we've got over a dozen great designs from over 11 years of professional wrestling podcasting. You can become a Patreon supporter at patreon.com/wizardspodcast, where each and every week we call out your name as one of our show producers, and the more you support us, the more things that you're entitled to receive, and believe me, they are fantastic. If you can't support us monetarily, if you don't shop at Amazon, that's absolutely fine. Continue to listen to us wherever you listen to us on the World Wide Web, and make sure you like, rate, review, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Doesn't cost you anything, helps us out, and we can continue to bring you the love fest that is the Shining Wizards.
What's up, folks? It's your boy, the Impact Player, Mr. Philly Ray, inviting all of you to check out the Turnbuckle Throwbacks Wrestling Podcast. Join us as we cover all things current in the world of pro wrestling, as well as paying homage to the old school, the Squared Circle. So listen in and find out why we are the recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment broadcasting. Find us on all social media platforms and anywhere you get your podcast from. And as always, we are the proudest members of the Shining Wizards Network and Rant Entertainment Media.
Are you tired of being lied to every day by the mainstream media?
Do you want to know what's really going on in the world?
Do you want to make up your own mind about things and not be told what to think or say?
Then listen to Inconclusive Breakdown, a weekly anti-PC look at the world of entertainment and current events, brought to you without censorship or filters.
You can find us everywhere you listen to podcasts, BitChute, and on ShiningWizardsNetwork.com.
And also, we're a proud member of the Shining Wizards Network.
Got 30 minutes to kill?
Come check out 30 Screams or Less, where we review a horror movie in 30 minutes or less. We cover new movies and old ones too.
We'll give our honest thoughts on the movie, good or shit, as well as a rating of each one that we watch.
New episodes weekly, available on the Shining Wizards Network and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Corey.
Come check us out at 30 Screams or Less.
G'day guys, my name is Thomas, one half of the Broadcast Podcast. With our podcast, we go back and watch wrestling events from WWE, WWF, WCW, ECW, AEW, and many other wrestling promotions. You can check us out on Twitter at The Broadcast, that's TheBrokast, and you can also download all episodes on Apple Podcast, Castbox, Castro, and many other podcast apps.
You like your music heavy? Then check out Radioactive Metal on the Shining Wizards Network. For over 16 years now, Radioactive Metal has been one of the longest running podcasts. Over the years, we've interviewed some legendary metal acts, had some awesome discussions, and cranked a hell of a lot of tunes. So join your cool Uncle Snowy and his co-host Aaron for the audio mosh pit that is Radioactive Metal here on the Shining Wizards Network.
Well, the action is underway!
What's up, everyone? When on the Shining Wizards Network, be sure to check out Wrestling Night in Canada. If we're not recording another kick-ass podcast,
Or playing in punk bands.
Or recording kick-ass heavy metal albums,
then we're sitting back, we're grabbing a couple brews, and going over everything to do in the world of pro wrestling.
Because we're from Winnipeg, you idiots.
The Mark Order Podcast is the only show you need if you're looking for dedicated coverage of everything AEW on the Shining Wizards Network. Join us live on YouTube every Wednesday night at 10:15 p.m. Eastern after Dynamite to chat along with the show. If you can't join us live, listen to us on your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on all social channels at Mark Order Pod and use the hashtag #JoinTheMarkOrder, because if you don't find us,
we will find you.
I'm Kevin Rowe.
I'm Al Day.
And we're a couple of down-under pounders that co-host Rogue Day Dots. an action figure collecting podcast where we talk about, well, just about anything that tickles our fancy at any given moment.
We're grumpy old men, and sometimes people get on our nerves. And when you get on our nerves, guess what? You get off the lawn.
Get off my lawn, asshole! We also go on a little bit of a mission. We go back and we're grading every wrestling figure line that's out there. I'm talking LJNs. I'm talking Jacks. I'm talking Hasbros. Who doesn't like a little Hulkaplex? It's a Gorilla Brain Wrestling podcast production found on the Shining Wizards Network.
I'm Duke Bags.
Kevin Road.
And together we are the co-hosts of Your Duke and Road. If you want to hear about some terrible wrestling shows, we got you covered.
Well, we talk about good ones, too.
We're currently talking about the death of WCW.
I know what we're fucking talking about. Sometimes we get guest spots, like from the Taskmaster. I like to listen to the Year of Duke and Rope podcast. They're funny guys. That I like when they talk about the Nards plows. I like Nards plows. That's a good move. And I like the Dungeon of Doom. You know, sometimes I call my butt the Dungeon of Doom. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, Oklahoma.
Let me tell you a little bit about my favorite wrestling podcast. All right. It's a podcast with two men, Duke Bags, Kevin Rhodes. They talk about professional wrestling. It's a man's sport, all right? And who better to talk about a man's sport than Duke Bags? Oklahoma.
And once in a while, Vince Russo stops by.
Whoa, you piece of shit! If you're not listening to the Year of Duke and Rope podcast in the back with the boys, you piece of shit, I don't know what you're doing. It's, you gotta slide one in there. If you're a man, you're talking about something only a man can do. You're talking about sliding one in there. Bro, take the time to slide one in there. All right, bro, you piece of shit, slide one in there. A Gorilla Brain Wrestling podcast production that you can find on the Shining Wizards Network.
All right, we are back and ready to get into this episode of Dynamite. I might have eaten most of a vegan pizza in the time that we were on commercial break, so I was very hungry, very delayed in my dinner today. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling energized. I loved this episode of Dynamite. Let's start with the haters in us. We're going to start with Joe. What didn't you like about this episode?
I didn't hate it. I just thought it was good. It was.
You said overrated is what you said to me.
I did not say overrated.
You said this company is in the mud. That's what I heard. You were
Very
like,
not what I said.
you said the Fed is on Netflix.
All I do is drink real American beer.
AEW is dying. So you thought it was pretty good, but not the leap forward that maybe Ryan and I thought it was.
Yeah, I think there's some parts of the show that just kind of really took me out of it. No, some of the Gauntlet had really great people in it. The Hobbs winning it was a nice little surprise for me. The Jarrett MJF promo went way too long for me. I don't know. I even felt like the women's match, I thought they had a lot of promise and it just didn't quite get to another gear for me. So just little things like that.
It was a low blow to the vajayjay, Joe.
I mean, no, we at least got Siege with Hot Girl Drafts next week. So
we did. God bless for that. But Ryan, for once in our lives, we're on the same side. We both thought that this episode of Dynamite lit the fuse, as it were. What were your kind of favorite highlights of the night before we get into this kind of more segment by segment?
Well, the hate is gonna hate. It's gonna shake. No, I mean, I liked it. I thought it was a really good episode. You heard my opinion on Rampage, and you just ignored me, passed by me on the Hammerstone conversation, but it relates to this. Hammerstein. Sorry, not Hammerstone. Hammerstein conversation.
I was like, wait, did you mention Alex Hammerstone? And I just
No, I mean
completely
Hammerstein.
missed it.
Sorry, they too many hammers. The MC Hammer conversation.
Mhm.
I think the smaller venues I think work out for two reasons. One, obviously, it's better to not have an empty area. The sound, all that looks better. But I also think it's bringing them the markets they weren't going to, and those are markets that aren't played out yet.
Sure.
Like, you know, I can't remember. Apparently, I'm confirming that Hammerstone is all elite. For Kevin
Grifo, what's cooking? Good looking.
But yeah, I think like I don't remember the last time anyone was in Tennessee. Like, it's bringing them places they don't usually go, and I think that's great because I think there's a lot more excitement when the product comes around. I enjoyed the show as a whole, and I thought every part of it delivered. I mean, I even have positive things to say about the Jeff Jarrett section, and I know that's going to shock people, but I do.
I'm shocked that I actually have a couple of positive things to say about that Jeff Jarrett program. I think MJF's the perfect guy that if this is headed toward like a retirement thing or winding down, like he's the perfect guy to be the one to kind of put him to pasture. But we started really hot with this Will Ospreay and Buddy Matthews match. We had gotten away from AEW starts with in-ring right away for a while, and then it kind of came back with the C2, and I was like, please let this persist past the Continental Classic, because AEW is best when it has its in-ring focus.
Wait, Kate, sorry. Hi, Kylie. And also, I caught the reference to Omega's song. I just don't play Final Fantasy, so it's not something I'm overly familiar with.
Wow. Learn up. I have no idea about anything gaming-wise, but Ospreay and Bud Matt to start the show. This was really, really fun way to kick it off. I'm so glad to see them return to this form because it felt like a hallmark of AEW to do this, and then they abandoned it. Tonight, in general, also just less segments. It wasn't so damn crowded with these 40-second backstages of I'm going to fight you. I'm going to fight you later. Okay. And like there was so much more breathing room in this episode, but some big stuff kind of that happened at the end here. It feels like maybe to me, Malachi Black will be done. I'm sure that Sean will have more for you on FightfulSelect.com later, but Bud Matthews is someone who, like, on the pre-show of Full Gear was getting tears. He's someone that people have been in the corner of for a while. Really, really great match with Will Ospreay. If you actually go back and look at the end of Ospreay's year, he took a lot of losses. Like more than necessary. And not all of them were like what he did for Darby Allin in the Continental Classic. I think right now you're going to see him go on a Cody-like booking run of he's just going to be unbeatable for a while. And hopefully those losses will come back later to be him evening up the score with some of those guys. But this was a whole bunch of fun. What I loved about it was overall, I felt like the feel kind of brought out some New Japan Will Ospreay for a bit because Buddy hit so damn hard. It kind of felt like he was working through some strong style with this, but I had a blast with this match. Ultimately, you have the Styles Clash not putting it away, but a hidden blade following up that Styles Clash for the finish here. Sometimes just letting two guys fight is really, really fun. But in the post-match, Will Ospreay obviously kind of out of breath. Like, this was not the cleanest Will Ospreay promo. It was definitely I just wrestled my ass off for 15 minutes promo. Kind of said, like, man, you are good enough to stand on your own. You don't need anyone in your corner. But if you're looking for tag gold or you're looking for singles gold, I'll see you down the line at some point. And he very specifically left out trios gold. Here is what I know. I know that Buddy Matthews had an option. And I know that Malachi Black had an option. I don't know if AEW picked either of those up yet. And I don't know if they were AEWs to pick up or the talents. I believe they were AEWs. I would say if Buddy Matthews is on television in the beginning of the year, that's probably a pretty good indicator that his option was picked up. I would guess that if we had this type of thing from Will Ospreay that was excluding Malachi Black, probably not going to be back, would be my guess. But I love Bud Matt. I was glad to see him get the shine. I think one straight that Will Ospreay's coming in is he has worked a lot of matches of talent of all different caliber and styles, and it's always been great. Bud Matt doesn't exactly need a lot of help. He also called him Buddy Murphy, which was very funny to me. But let's start with Joe on this one. I loved our opener. I thought this was really fun. And I also like that Will Ospreay opened the show. Kind of reminded me of when Orange Cassidy had that international title and it was just like, we're off and running. Or when they would open with the tag titles in a high energy match and we were off and running. I was a big fan of that format. What did you think of our opener here?
This was my favorite part of the show. I liked the match between the two of them. Kind of to your point, I thought there was a lot of striking going on. Big fan of Blade Matthews, and then when even before we got to the end of the match and news about Malachi's future in AEW was coming out, I think I thought to myself, I've always wanted to see Buddy get pushed more to singles. I feel like whether it is in WWE or here, he hits the ceiling for a while, and people don't quite give him that next bump up when he's more than capable to do it. So when Ospreay gave that little promo at the end, I figured that maybe now finally we're going to see that. I liked what we saw from House of Black toward the end of last year when they were kind of going more towards a face honorable team, more of a respectful team. So I'm hoping he gets a singles push out of all this. But hell of a match, a lot of false finishes, and Will Ospreay telling him that he's his buddy guy.
Yeah, he had also tweeted online, which absolutely cracked me up. I'm not your friend guy, or I'm not your buddy guy, or whatever. A fantastic South Park reference, but I agree with you. I would be all in for a Bud Matt singles push. Lord knows they have enough titles for them. I also would think him and Brody King would be a very fun tag team. But if you're going to do that, they have to beat Private Party. I think them beating Private Party could be really fun of like, that's cute. You guys and your shots theme and how like acrobatic you are. We're here to destroy you. Could be something fun 4 months from now or whatever when the time is right. But Ryan, let's go to you. What did you think of our opening match? Also, I forgot to mention Ian Riccaboni on commentary. God bless. Like such an uptick in what happened on the commentary desk tonight. What did you think of our opener here? And especially the post match and where this might be going. What did you think of all that?
So, I mean, the match was great. I love when they start out with a match like this where you have two guys who can just go and they let them just do it. That's what separates them from WWE, and that's not a knock on either. I want both things to feel different. So if one starts always heavy on talking, I want the other to start heavy on wrestling. It's just, it makes things, it doesn't make me feel like I'm watching the same program every night of the week. They have an interesting style because both guys are have a history of high flying, but now they've both become such muscle people that they're hard hitters, and then they don't do that as much. And so you have that interesting, they were very quick, but also hard hitting and aggressive. And I wouldn't call it technical by any sorts, but they were just, if you'd had this match 7 years ago, I think it's all flippy dippy stuff, which I like. I'm not insulting it, but you have it now. And I just couldn't get over that. I'm like, wow, if we'd watched this match back in the day, how different it would have been.
Very good point. Very good point that they were both like the aerial assassin, right? And Buddy Matthews was definitely not as diesel as he is now. He is super, super jacked. I love that you mentioned that because that's something that didn't occur to me at all. Like these are two different wrestlers than they were if you did this 5-10 years ago, for sure.
Yeah. And then the post-match stuff was interesting because I thought of it going 3 different ways. There is an update as of 2 hours ago on Fightful Select. I'm not giving it away, but if you want to go read, there's somewhat of an update. It's up to Kate if she gives it because she gets paid by that organization. I do not.
You can spoil it. That's fine. I'm sure everybody's done that.
Well, it's not really much of an update, but there are a lot of thoughts that Malachi is probably going to be done.
Got it.
So you could have Buddy and Brody just go on their singles, which would be amazing for each of them. I think Brody's singles run would be incredible. You could have them as a tag team, what you just talked about. That's a lot of fun. Or you have the House of Black stay together, but with Julia as the head, because she has to be the head. If they're out, it's her running the show. I think Hot Take Ryan's going to step in for a second, so prepare yourselves. I actually think Brody and Buddy's ties with Malachi have sometimes held those two back. because they're always then in a spooky story or always in a like they're. I like House of Black. This isn't an insult to it, but they have a very specific story that they tell. And so it kept Brody and Buddy in that story.
Yeah.
And then they never got a chance to go out and do their own things, where Buddy can go do these amazing matches and have almost like I'm the best in the world style stories. And Brody's fucking Brody. Like they almost couldn't because they were always involved in that spookiness. So I liked House of Black. Now, part of that is just that House of Black wasn't used enough. So you have like, maybe if I saw them every week, I would feel differently on that opinion. But it just felt like they had the same story going over and over and over again. Julia as leader could change that up because she's just a totally different character than what you would have.
I think you're right too, in that like it was weird because we never really got payoffs of like the house rules stuff, and like they had such a character intensive run, and it didn't really. They had a really productive run, and then it just fell apart sort of after that. So Fightful's like saying that they can't confirm anything contract-wise, but there's a prevailing belief basically that Malachi is on his way out. That's consistent with what I heard. Now that I know that's up, I can tell you more specifically what I heard was that Malachi was done at the end of the year. But I obviously don't report things and I don't scoop things, but I had heard rumors of he was done at the end of the year. So that seems consistent with what I've heard there.
I have another hot take here, by the way.
Okay, sure. No, heat us up. It's very cold out. I would be fine with more hot takes.
It's very difficult, and this relates to House of Black and all that. It's very difficult to maintain spooky characters and have them consistently perform because you look. Malachi in both everywhere has struggled up and down like his momentum because it's just after a while it starts to feel corny. You're like Undertaker, how many times did he have to change what version of the Undertaker he was?
Sure.
To like so like it's very difficult. So I think that's also part of the problem that they ran into is like it all starts to feel
to be fair, Aleister Black was in the middle of an IC title run when they released him. Or like an IC title feud with Big E when they released him. He was white hot when they released him. It was very weird.
I'm not saying he does. They have hot moments. I'm not saying that. I'm saying but I feel like there are a lot spooky characters have a lot more ups and downs. It's a lot more hills and valleys to them.
Sure. His main roster run, once they actually got it going though, didn't really have any dips. They just released him in the middle of it, which is what was kind of so weird about all that. But you're right, because you even look at the Wyatt Six now, like they came in super hot, and now it's kind of like, what are they fully doing? Like as a unit, now what are they doing feud to feud? But it is very tricky, and I think it gets even trickier when you have 1 foot in reality and 1 foot in spooky world, because that's quite a balancing act. But guys, keep chatting along with us. We'll ask you to leave a thumbs up on this video as well. And also just subscribe to the Mark Order podcast if you haven't already. You'll get little updates from us. This is mostly what we do. We'll occasionally do some pre-shows, and we did Collider Cast for a little bit, but honestly, Collision kind of fell off. So we didn't feel like we needed to keep maintaining that on our Saturdays. But please support us. It helps us work toward monetization goals and things like that if you haven't already. If you're listening in audio form, please leave a 5-star review on whatever audio platform you are watching as well. But let's move along. We got some highlights from Wrestle Dynasty. If either of you gentlemen want my New Japan login, you can have it if you didn't watch it. Really fantastic show, I will say. With the exception of this year's Forbidden Door, which felt a little off, I think they excel at these co-promoted shows for the most part. Like, there were some things, like Brody King and Dave Finlay had no right being as good as it was. That was one of the most fun matches of the entire weekend. A lot of people felt like Wrestle Dynasty was better than Wrestle Kingdom. That was unfortunately true for my favorite in the main event as well. Like, 40 minutes with Shota Umino as a face was not the way to go on the New Japan side. 20 minutes with Ricochet or whatever that was, probably a little less than that, was super fucking fun. And Gabe Kidd and Kenny, obviously. So some highlights from that, and it was a very successful event outside of a commentary snafu that I don't think is actually that big of a deal. But we have Private Party coming out. They're here in Tennessee. they're throwing a little celebration for themselves. I got to be honest, seemed like a very public party to me, because here comes the Hurt Syndicate. MVP says if they want to party, they want to join, and they raise a toast to Private Party and the talented athletes they are, who defended those tag team titles. But Lashley says here is to the Hurt Syndicate, and kind of toast themselves, and they want to take those tag titles back. So interesting place to go with this. I love how much better AEW has gotten at the dovetailing of making segments work into the next match and things like that. I felt like what was a home run about today's episode that Joe just doesn't seem to appreciate is I felt like we were back to like the AEW identity and an enhanced production, where if you're a newer viewer, you're getting more context from video packages, and the commentary desk was better. I do know if Sean is working to find out stuff on that as well, because Chris Charlton got suspended on the New Japan side. Tony Schiavone very aggressively tweeted about it, was notably absent from tonight's show, but I don't give a shit because Ian Riccaboni's better anyway than anybody. So there's all these enhanced things. I think it's a better presentation overall, but it feels like the AEW identity. But things like this of segments leading into each other, big W in AEW as a reset, especially with the Hurt Syndicate. But we do get our Bobby Lashley and Mark Briscoe match right after this. I think they got to find something new for Mark Briscoe to do other than look great and losses, but Bobby Lashley was always going to win this one. MVP on commentary is a hoot. He had a lot of things to say about the referee. Some fun hope spots for Mark Briscoe. He's great at them, but he needs to be in a story or on my TV once a week maximum, probably on Collision right now, because they just keep plugging him in because he's really good. I get that, but you're just going to make him look like a loser after having like a very medium C2 and losing a bunch outside of that. Really hasn't had a lot of big wins since losing that ROH title. So get him something to sink his teeth into. But this match was fun enough. Lashley continues to look great. I love what the Hurt Syndicate's offering. Like they have a lot of authority that seems backed up. We'll go to Ryan to start on this one. How did you feel about our Private Party segment? Like that we're leaning into possibly a story arising with them. And what did you think of our match between Briscoe and Lashley?
Yeah, shut. Liked the Private Party segment a lot. Like you, they need a story. I liked the story they were starting to tell with Top Flight and Leo and all that, but Leo and Top Flight have their own story, so that needs to conclude before that can move on. Hurt Syndicate's a good transition. There was a moment I really enjoyed, and it's a small character moment, but it stands out to me, is when Bobby dumps the water, not the shot, sorry. Well, it's water. I'm not dumb enough to think it was an actual shot, but dumps it into the bucket. Isaiah Cassidy stands up to him, like doesn't back down, doesn't look, like he pulls off his glasses and he's like, I'm looking at you in the eye. And I like that. It's just a small character moment where there are times in wrestling history where a team like Private Party would almost be like scared a little bit. And I like that they weren't. That they were, I'll stand up with you. I will look you eye. Like, we're going to be nice when you walk in. There's no reason to have problems if there's no problems. But as soon as you do something disrespectful, I'm willing to stand up to you. Because when they're your champs, they need to be at that level. They're not heels, so they can't be afraid. They have to be willing to fight anyone. The match itself was fine. Seeing Bobby Lashley toss around Mark Briscoe is just really funny and has its moments. They don't know what to do with Mark Briscoe, so that's a whole different conundrum of like, I legitimately think I'm going to avoid because they ignore it, so I'm going to ignore it too. He's the guy to beat Jericho for the ROH title and be an ROH champ, the ROH champ. Like, there's such a thing there for him, but that involves them caring about ROH. So that's a whole different discussion. As it stands, I like Private Party versus Hurt Syndicate.
Yeah, I think that could be a lot of fun. That's a fun program. It does feel like we kind of dropped what was going on with Swerve really fast. Like, that feels like it happened and like we were in the middle of the feud and it got dropped off a cliff rather than it was like a really fun one-off and we moved on. Joe, what are your thoughts on this Private Party segment and Mark Briscoe versus Lashley? I loved MVP on commentary at the end, just being like, he's in the hurt lock. There's no way out. He might as well just submit. Like, just some cute stuff there from MVP on commentary.
I'm a little intrigued, I guess, with the private party thing. I'm glad they're kind of making them more visible again after there's a couple weeks where people were wondering why they weren't on a pay-per-view card, or why weren't they on TV, or why they're on Rampage and not Dynamite.
Why don't you give a shit about the tag titles in general at all, ever? Yeah.
Always some enough, yes. So I thought with the Hurt Syndicate coming out, interrupting them and challenging them, I thought it could be either really great for Private Party if they can somehow beat the Hurt Syndicate and somehow pin Shelton Benjamin for the win, or something happens, or it means that their title reign was very transitional and the Hurt Syndicate's going to have gold, which I'm hoping it's the former rather than the latter.
Yeah,
Yes.
Brian, you had something you wanted to throw
I
in?
have a question, but after Joe, I was waiting for Joe to finish. Just had a question.
Oh, and then the match is fine. I think, like you said, Briscoe needs something more beyond being the gritty underdog. He's being used right now, kind of like how Cesaro was used a lot in WWE for me. Really great
Okay.
worker, can be credible. He's a good guy to take a loss against Bobby Lashley to make him build up Lashley, but the match really was all just to lead to the tag match that's going to come down the line.
Yeah, it's also a little bit odd because I felt like the conglomeration just fizzled out. And then, this weekend you had Orange Cassidy say that someone was going to conglomerate all over New Japan, which was very funny. And then Kyle O'Reilly came out to the conglomeration Titantron, which was kind of odd. So, you could build to a fun conglomeration versus Hurt Syndicate thing if the numbers are right. I think that could be a really fun, that could actually be a very fun 6-man feud. But I also feel like Orange Cassidy's too vulnerable right now, and you need to get him winning singles matches sooner than later. But Brian, you had a question? You raised your hand over there?
Yes, I was being polite. I didn't want to interrupt Joe because my question it was based off some of his comments. But so okay, Joe was saying like the fear is this is a great title defense for Private Party or their title reign over a snap. Is there any chance? And we're playing whatever that it's not going to be Shelton Benjamin and Bobby Lashley, that this is how Hurt Syndicate introduces a team to their faction. Anyone believe there's a chance of that?
I do, just because EJ and Duke and Lee Johnson's names have been thrown around, and I think them taking a loss to Private Party is a fun way to introduce them to the main roster, because Lashley and Shelton could be like, that's not how we do things around here, and MVP could be like, that's not who we raised you to be, kind of thing. There's some fun things that could be done with that. I think that's a possibility. Joe, do you have any thoughts on that? Because honestly, finding a way for Shelton and Lashley to lose would be hard, but it's possible. Someone else could cost them or whatever.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I didn't think about that with what Ryan suggested there. So that would be a good way of doing that. If you want to keep the belts on Private Party and not hurt Shelton and Bobby, unless there's another feud that interferes with Bobby and Shelton winning.
What if Mark Briscoe joins the Hurt Syndicate?
Why not? At this point,
he hurts people.
He does.
He hurts people. I don't think that's the direction they're going, but now I want to see it. I want to see Mark Briscoe, and the Hurt Syndicate in the Hurt Syndicate.
You see him come out in a nice little 3-piece suit.
That's what I'm thinking, the whole presentation.
No. Does he put teeth in?
Gold teeth.
Okay.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. We're cooking up something here on the Mark Order podcast. But let's move along to our Casino Gauntlet match. Overall, before we dig into it, a couple of things of note from my perspective. One, and this is an adopted complaint, but it's one that I agree with. One of these times when they do a Casino Gauntlet match, there's gonna have to be a pin by the fourth guy in or something, because then it's like we're all just waiting around.
I would do it for the first two. I'd have the first two like that.
Sure. Yeah. I would say 5 or under. It needs to happen within 6 minutes of a casino gauntlet starting or something like that. Because they need to establish that that's possible. Otherwise, the buy-in is just getting trickier, because it feels just like a Royal Rumble match where nobody's getting eliminated. And it also, you're going to tap out the way that you can produce these matches, I think, because at some point, there's just too many guys playing possum in all of these at some point for the most part. I would say the one where Ricochet got introduced and Nigel was in it at All In was my favorite one, not just because of those reasons, but it just felt like they had the best flow of it, because Nigel lariating people can knock people out for a really long time. I'm always a fan of the way that Zach clears rings, because it's nobody else does it like him. He'll clear a ring with holds and technical moves, and people will writhe in pain and fall out of the ring. It's like nothing you'll ever see. So there's like all these interesting things that happened in that one specifically. So I am going to need them to do one casino gauntlet that's like that. The other thing with this is, why are we setting up a number one contender when somebody is already fighting for the title? Like, I just feel like the inevitability is already an issue with Adam Copeland not beating Mox. And now you're saying, like, we're telling you that Adam Copeland is not going to beat Moxley. So before we even dive into the match, do you guys have any issues with the logic of those either?
The logic of having it already be...
Yeah, that we already have a contender in waiting, and is the format something that you guys feel like needs to be freshened up a little bit with some timing place? But since you asked first, Joe, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I had that in my notes when I watched it. It felt like Rumble, where guys just kind of disappear for a while. There are points in the matches where I'd be like, what happened to Riddler? Can Riddler just disappear for minutes on end and then pop back up, take a beat down, go away for a while? He also looks a lot like Justin Long from Knocked Up when he's growing the beard out.
He really does.
It's getting a little wild, but yeah, I think, like you said, that the last one with Nigel and Zach and all of them, I felt like that one had better flow, felt less rumbly, and I think that's the one where they kind of really reintroduced the format of it, where that first time everyone kind of like, how does this work? What happens?
It was also the first one Will Ospreay didn't win, but like they didn't announce everyone before on that, and they had some surprises on that one too. I was wondering if Speedball was going to debut tonight, but they did not choose to do that.
And yeah, I was a little surprised with Hobbs winning, just because, they gave him a couple of weeks of squashing in handicap matches to make him a singles guy again, but I guess Mox just needs some kind of title match in his hometown. So,
yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. It does just feel like we're all just sitting around waiting with this title angle. Because it and to their credit, it's a very difficult thing to do an umbrella angle like this, like that involves the entire company, especially when you have like 6 other titles. But Ryan, do you have any logic issues with this? Are you on the same side as me here of like, they got to do one? You said the first 2 guys at some point would be a fun way to go.
I want to see one where there's 2 guys out there, and as the third guy is running down, the pin happens. And it just changes everything to be like, it can happen. And it can happen that quick. So that's why the first 2 positions matter the most. Because if you're not there, you don't even have a chance to stop it. So, but you have to be careful, because you don't want to throw like Serpentico in that situation, so it's obvious. It has to be someone who you don't think will get pinned quickly, but also doesn't really matter, because you can always downplay it as they weren't playing for keeps yet. They thought,
It also would be fun to do with 3. You don't want to do 3 guys of the same stable, because that's just weird. But if it was 3 guys that all had emotional investments at each other, as in if the third guy was running down to the ring to keep the first guy from getting pins, and then the second guy pins the first guy, there's something to that for sure.
I was kind of wondering how that's going to play out with the Undisputed Kingdom in here. I thought maybe they would tease a little bit of we're not quite gelled back together yet. With Kyle and Roddy and Adam.
Kyle coming out to the conglomeration theme was definitely weird. We'll get into all of that and more, but we do have Powerhouse Hobbs with the surprise win, this is something I really liked. This is part of what made it feel like Dynamite of yore. I was sitting there being like, oh, probably Jay White will get his one-on-one shot or something like that. And there's a difference between a swerve and just doing something out of the blue. And like this felt closer to a swerve or not even a swerve, but like Hobbs has the acumen to do it. Like he's a young growing star. He's believable because of his size in a context like this. We're supposed to buy that he's one of the best wrestlers in the company. He's had some wins where he's needed them, right? So it's not like they just picked a guy and he just won. Like it feels like he has the credibility to back it up, but he was still a dark horse in this match. Very weird that Wheeler Yuta got fixated on Jeff Jarrett in this. I don't know why he abandoned going for the world title to be fixated on Jeff Jarrett as if he was the biggest threat to it. But Jarrett came in at 11. Kyle O'Reilly was in at 10, Archer in at 9, Roddy Strong in at 8. He's been in a few of these now, Roddy Strong. Powerhouse Hobbs was in it at 7. Adam Cole, Bebe. Oh no, he wasn't in it. What am I saying? Who was number 6? Ricochet was number 5.
All-time troll moment.
Swerve was in it. Ricochet, sorry, I was looking at my notes. I had literally been like, Swerve, nope, Ricochet. Plays Swerve's theme, and then it flips into his theme in a fantastic troll moment, to your point. Wheeler came out at number 3, Hangman at number 2, and Jay White at number 1. So I also think they have some things of like, oh my gosh, they came in 1 and 2. What are the chances? Like, just have them come in 1 and 4. Nothing changes because neither of those guys are winning in that time. So, making it so obvious of like, I'm in here and now so is my arch rival. It's like a little. We could break up some of that too, but these matches are a lot of fun. This is their format. But the big thing here, Jeff Jarrett getting run off by Wheeler in this, and Hobbs getting the spine buster on Kyle O'Reilly, and it was a nasty looking one. He looks great in this. So I'm very happy because some of the complaints with this product overall have been, what about your young talent? Like it started as such like a fresh young product, and lately it has been a lot of older guys occupying key spots. So this is good because it's inevitable Mox is going to win anyway. You might as well let a young talent show out in that spot. So I was surprised by the winner, but I liked it. Joe, what did you think of our Casino Gauntlet?
It was fun to watch. I thought, they always loaded up, so it's not just a bunch of, quote unquote mid-carders. There's a lot of, you had Heyman in there, you had Jay White, Adam Cole, all those guys. So it leads to a little bit of unpredictability. And then, like you said, throwing Hobbs to win it was a pleasant surprise. It wasn't what I would thought of. I thought, he'd just be a guy you need a big guy in there. So I thought
impressive.
Yeah,
like this type of match, throw some guys out guy. Yeah, that's where I thought that was going to.
So for him to win, like, okay, that threw me off a little bit. And then I guess it was nice to see some of the side things that come out of this, where it's, we see later on Jarrett follows this up, and after his loss of not being able to win and go for the title. So there were some things that came out of this, I guess. But otherwise, it's always just like a cluster, so it's kind of hard to follow. I know it's what Ryan will say, because I think that's usually what Ryan talks about. Ryan?
11 guys is a lot for a match like this. Like, to buy that 10 guys couldn't pin each other at any point is a lot. Sorry, go ahead. I was chewing my ice, and then
Is 11 guys too many for you, Ryan?
Never enough. Ricochet with the best troll moment because you have Hangman in there, and it's like, oh god, are we getting Swerve and Hangman in the same ring? It's just such a good moment. Ricochet is really doing well with this version of his heel character. Like, he's so hateable in the best way. Oh god, I'm with Joe. When I saw Powerhouse Hobbs, I was like, oh, that's, he's a threat in the match, but it won't hurt him.
I thought he was going to be like Lance Archer. You know what I mean? Like, oh, a big guy in there to do some damage. Fun.
Yeah. And it doesn't hurt him to lose. It never hurts to lose at Casino Gauntlet because you don't have to be the one that's been. I liked this match. I actually really enjoyed the match. The whole way it was laid out. I liked how it almost felt like it was ramping up for a little bit. You'd have Adam Cole come out. You have like Powerhouse Hobbs. You never felt like there was a letdown. Even the big guys that I didn't think would win, I thought they would at least provide a lot of fun. I do think they need to start building some intrigue around these. Don't do it as often, and build it's going to be stealing a little bit from the Rumble, but I don't care. That's what wrestling is. It's stealing. Everything is stealing someone else's idea. You have it. They're starting to do that with they do it with the women's, and they've done it with the men's before, who gets the number 1 seed. But besides that, do things like build intrigue of who's going to be in it. Are they feuding with each other? Do we think they'll show up? Who's going for what? Will they team up to hurt everyone else? So it's just them. Do that, and I think you have a better story.
I agree.
Are you laughing at the chat? Going with may Netflix be with you? And,
a little bit with that, and also, I guess Sean is out next week because I just got a message from Alex that said, "Quick, tell Sean that you'll host with me next week." So I'll let you know if I'm around.
Mark Order with more guest hosts.
I mean, Joe is worse than I am at this point, but
it's my birthday next week. Okay,
is it really?
It is. I have to have a work dinner, so I won't get home until about 7:30, 8 o'clock, or my time. So
I didn't know that. Happy birthday! We will text you funny things offline. I was also laughing at the chat though too because it's been an ongoing joke this week because the Netflix premiere was just the most boring. It was so many celebrities waving and so much of them thanking you thanking Netflix of that. I've just been like, thank you Netflix for letting me breathe this morning. Thank you Netflix for supporting the wrestling industry so that we got this episode of Dynamite, because the trickle effect of the Netflix deal has come down to the point where now AEW is streaming on Max. It was so absurd how much they were shoving it down our throats. And to be clear, very aware that show was not for people like me. That was trying to get new Netflix watchers to watch. But
I've heard that, and this is my only chance to say it, so I'm going to say this opinion because I've actually heard you and Alex talk about it, I think twice now, and I've heard it in a couple other places. But I disagree. That wasn't for new people to watch either. That was a show for WWE and Netflix only, not the fans. That was for them to congratulate each other. Because if I'm a new person watching, I have it does absolutely nothing for me to hear that type of praise going back and forth. If anything, it's just this is weird. What did I miss?
Yeah. It also, kind of in that same vein, I know a couple of people that tuned in and were like, why am I watching Vanessa Hudgens wave at people? It was just so bizarre. It was so bizarre. So, it kind of wasn't, you're right. It was almost for neither audience. It was for WWE and Netflix to just
like a Saudi show.
It kind of was.
In the US.
It was I love you. It was weird how much they love Netflix. If I was Netflix, I'd be like, we say Netflix and chill over here, not Netflix and Stage 5 clinger. You know what I mean? It's a lot. So
And I really hope AEW doesn't follow WWE into. AEW has some ads on the mat, and I don't like that as it is. But I hope they don't go to WWE levels because I really do hate ads on the mat.
You know, it was so funny because the rest of the presentation looked awesome. They had crowd over the entrance. The announce
really
table
cool.
looked awesome. The referee shirts were terrible, but the canvas was distractingly bad. New Japan has ads, and I don't know if it's because I don't recognize the language like endemically, or if it's because I just have more forgiveness because I'm like, they're not a multi-billion-dollar company. Like, they probably need those spots more, or they're just not put on the mat as offensively. But that was like distracting. Joe, did you watch any of it, or did you catch any of it, or did you just want to wave and thank Netflix right now? Because that's what I like to do.
No, I mean, we wouldn't be here without Netflix. We wouldn't be streaming.
Streaming as a whole wouldn't exist without Netflix. So
I disagree, Ryan. We need more. We need more Cracker Barrel barrels in the corner in the ring.
I said it looked like my laptop in college. It looked like because I think it was because the color of the mat and the color of the ads. Like AEW used to have their entire logo on it, and it didn't look bad, but it looked like I slapped some band stickers on my laptop. Was the overall aesthetic.
I don't mind a segment where they're clearly, advertising for someone like Cracker Barrel, or when WWE does it. I don't mind that at all when it's a segment or a match. And I could live with the four corners AEW does. And as much as I hated it, okay, I thought the Prime bottle was stupid, but if you have just one giant ad there, I hate it, but at least I'm like, it's just one, you can kind of go around it. But they've now just layered the mat, and I'm like, it's looking like a Premier League soccer jersey. And I'm like, this is just...
or a NASCAR car.
Yes, NASCAR's a better one. It's looking like NASCAR. Ugh.
Well, let's keep moving on. We got some people coming in, I'm assuming, after the Fightful post show. So thanks for stopping in. 1LT Photo, Pieces over here. Wags, thank you for hanging out. LeBron, who was in here earlier, too. I don't think I shouted him out, but we thank you guys for sticking with us.
I do want to say, I kind of agree with Laurent's point where he's saying, like, they need to maybe cut down on these. Like, twice a year, I think.
Agreed. Yeah.
Like, is max.
I would say I would even go up to 4 because they have 4 big pay-per-views. I wouldn't do it for every single one of them, but if you did it for 2 big pay-per-views and 2 intermittent programs, that'd probably be all right. Yeah.
Once a quarter would work, but you no more than that, because it starts to be like, what are we doing?
And I will say, this is so like, we're talking a lot about the format of a Casino Gauntlet, but I feel like all 4 should feel different, because that's what I liked about the first few. Was it was like, this one was surprises heavy because you had Nigel and Zach and Ricochet, and then other ones were like more in-ring, like establishing the format and who's gonna win, and it being Will Ospreay and stuff like that. So like, I want them all to feel like they have their own fresh approaches to, like, if you did one that was someone within the first 4 guys got pinned, one that had one major talent, one that just had some really cool in-ring and a surprise winner, and one that was just straight up. Like, that would be fine. That would be fine.
Yeah, you have your pay-per-view match one, where like the Nigel one, and then you have like the regular Dynamite version, which is what we kind of got tonight.
Yeah.
And, you can do like a collision version. Yeah.
A little spice. I am excited that we're getting our first women's one. I think we're going to talk in a bit about who's going to win that. I think maybe we're going to see Timeless Toni Storm return there, because this rookie, it just isn't ready. But before we get to that, please leave a thumbs up on this video. I know we had some people coming into the chat all fresh. It really does help us quite a bit. And if you haven't subscribed, please go ahead and do so right now. It really helps us out when we get new subscribers as well. But after this, we have Ian Riccaboni, the GOAT. He's so good, man. Like, I know I said it a little bit at the beginning of the show, but I don't know why Tony Schiavone wasn't there tonight. I'm sorry, I didn't miss him. I feel like he's been outright bad of late. Like, he just, oh, what a moment. So much. Like, I can't with that guy right now. And Ian is my very favorite. Like, he's my favorite commentator with Nigel. So like, as far as the two things those guys do on commentary, which is very different. So I loved that, but we have Jeff Jarrett here, and he's in the ring with Ian, my goat, and Jeff puts over his family, and he gets asked how he's feeling, says it's 2025. Does Jeff still have what it takes to climb that mountain? He's kind of what he's starting to ask himself here, but MJF comes in, cut my music, calls Ian Riccaboni a Bible thumper, which I thought was weird because he's from Allentown, and he doesn't tweet a lot of Christian things, but I think that was more playing to Tennessee probably. But I like where this is going more than I necessarily loved the segment, because I felt like it did go long, but there was some good stuff in here, and I feel like an MJF Jeff Jarrett promo or program is actually a really, really good way to go. But he notes that they haven't met yet, which I like because we haven't actually seen them interact on screen very much. He wants his Triple B back, but the world title scene is tough. Mox has that belt. Hobbs has his shot at it, thanks to Jeff Jarrett being a failure, which is some good stuff. Paige, Cage, and Cope are there, but there's only one man who can do this. He's beaten icons, a 35-year veteran, a man who's beaten Hall of Famers, and that's Jeff Jarrett. MJF said he had to Google him because he's not a dinosaur in this. And that is embarrassing, and he doesn't want to retire yet, but that professional wrestling thinks he... What did I write? Professional wrestling thinks he has... But that is all the professional wrestling that he thinks he has left. My apologies. You still got a chance, breakout here. But this is mostly MJF just driving home that he wants the belt. He wants his Triple B back. MJF does the Jeff Jarrett strut, the Fargo strut there, and asks if he wants to make a deal with little MJF, who calls out MJF for being the longest reigning world champion, but still too young to learn life lessons. One-hit wonder, he calls him. Some good stuff in here. And Jarrett says he's looking for title number 13 in 2025. And calls MJF an entitled little prick and just kind of leaves here. So I feel like that means MJF is going to have a title. I don't think it's the world title. But it was weird how title-centric this was, considering it feels like it's leading toward a retirement match. I don't know where this is going, but I feel like these two are probably a match made in heaven. Like, Jeff Jarrett is going to hear some insults about Karen Jarrett. He's going to fire back at MJF. MJF will take out some people to match Jeff Jarrett and his whole family that he has going on over there. So I love this as a program. I was kind of confused about why it was so title-centric in all of this, but this did go on a very long time. I like the direction it's heading in more than the content that we got out of it tonight, but the crowd seemed pretty into it, so good on them for that. We'll start with Ryan on this. Your thoughts on Double J, SU, Double L, I, VAN?
You got there eventually.
I should have just gone with Sully. I should have.
Yeah. So I think establishing that this is Jarrett's last year is a very a good thing, because I think it'll give a lot of leeway for people when he's on TV, because they'll be like, all right, this is his farewell thing, and that's fine. I loved MJF coming out and explaining why he's not going for the title in such an MJF way of being like, it seems like a lot of work. There's just too many people going for it. It just seems like too much work. Like, that is such an MJF thing, and I appreciate that, because I would want to know why MJF's not going for the belt that he thinks is his. So I do appreciate that. I think part of the reason it's so belt heavy is not only is MJF about to go for it, not only should MJF want to go for it, Jarrett should want to go for it in his last year. Like, that's something you should want to go out. Like, Sting went out as a tag champ. Jarrett should want to go out as a champ. I think the funniest thing is this fits so well with MJF's character, where he's kind of like, this old guy's retiring and he's well loved right now. Let me go shit on him. And it just feels so natural for him. I really liked it. I think it just fit perfectly.
Well said. I like that justification. I think I kind of was in and out with my attention, so you're the title centric aspect of it makes more sense when framed like that. I genuinely probably was not listening close enough to pick up
because
the
you saw Gary and you're like, all right, I'm done.
But I just feel like an old school heel like MJF. Like I don't know if there's a better choice in the company as an active wrestler to face Jeff Jarrett for something like this. Like I really, really think that's the right call. But Joe, I know you said this felt long. I felt like it was long too, but what did you think of what we got? And also, how do you feel about kind of overall where it might be headed?
If it leads to, almost like a retirement type of match with MJF, I think that'll be good. Because, like you said, he's the perfect person to get heat and retire Double J from in-ring action. With Double J, good old Jeff Jarrett talking about going for the title this year, I think it makes sense for MJF to, snipe off like contenders one-on-one instead of joining the mix. So, Jeff Jarrett wants to go off the title, but I'm sure Mac probably thinks of him as being an old guy and easy target to eliminate. So why not go for the quote-unquote low-hanging fruit and remove him and wait until the title picture sorts itself out? But yeah, I think it'll be fun. Like I said, you'll have some fun promos. I thought maybe he would drop the Karen Jarrett stuff tonight, but we'll save that for another time, I'm sure.
Yeah, he likes to escalate his heat a lot. So, one LT photo saying, I'd like to thank Netflix for Ryan having a spot on take. I think he probably had been watching some like Netflix wrestle analysis documentaries on Netflix.
Yeah.
Probably watch some just really Netflix giving us the resources. Ryan, if you wanted to wave to the camera like a celebrity from the early 2000s, feel free to. Don't forget the people behind you. You got it. Oh my God, it's Ryan Sullivan. Don't forget about the people back here. There you go. You gotta wave to them too. Yeah.
No, you look just like Macaulay Culkin.
That's why I did the Macaulay Culkin raise up.
It was perfect.
Take down there looking like Topanga,
God. At least they brought in like Macaulay Culkin and Topanga both love wrestling, so at least they did bring in people that love wrestling.
Yes, same with Vanessa Hudgens. It's just all very funny that they were from the 2000s. My friend who had tuned in and said like it seemed kind of corny or whatever saw Vanessa Hudgens wave and was like, she looks really happy though. Like she's in. I think he said she was in the moment. That was what got me. He was like, I didn't care about it, but Vanessa Hudgens looked so happy. Good for her. Oh, thank you, Netflix, for these moments. But thank you, Netflix, also for just like MJF and Jeff Jarrett. I feel like they wouldn't be here without Netflix because MJF is a generation lower than us. You know what I mean? Joe throwing on the Joey Four Eyes. Joey Four Eyes over there.
Wore glasses, so that I didn't think he could find them to put them on.
Well done. Very
because
well.
Wags called him out. Wags said that Joe didn't get the memo to wear glasses, and he was blaming Netflix.
Oh, well, first of all, that would never be Netflix's fault.
Listen, we're not long, but we're going longer than sometimes. But I have to say, I feel ashamed of myself. I have an eye doctor appointment tomorrow, and I'm very excited.
You have a lot going on though with your eyeglass situation.
Because I can't see long distance anymore. I've kind of lost it. So
That's
I'm
not
very
good.
excited to get that fixed.
Hell yeah. Love that for you. Do you have to get your pupils dilated?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's the worst. For me, at least.
I don't mind it.
I'm so sensitive to light. You have greenish eyes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think blue eyes are more sensitive to light or whatever. And I never really believed that. And then I was like, no, that's true because my pupils are dilated. I want to jump off a bridge.
I could go back to work, whatever. It doesn't bother me. But again, maybe my eyesight's gotten better, but I can't see distance. So I'm very excited to see again.
I'm excited for you. But until then, for these next 12 hours or so, you're just going to have to cope.
Oh,
cope,
I
Brian.
see what you did there. I see what you did there.
Live on the edge, Ryan. Live on the edge.
There it is.
Live it on the edge.
We got Adam Copeland coming out, and he wants Excalibur to shut the hell up. Talks about the time that he was out for, and says, while he was gone, you took out Bryan Danielson, you murdered Darby last week, but there's no forgiving what you did to his friends at FTR. That was a huge mistake. I liked the beginning of this, but I was like, on Collision, you just told me the whole reason you wanted to do this was because you wanted the world title. So we're getting different justifications here. But I guess that was technically before he took out FTR, so whatever. But he goes through basically the issues that he had health-wise, talks about Eddie Guerrero breaking his neck, but what did he do? He worked through the rest of the match. He mentions Malachi Black, which seemed antithetical to what happened in the first part of the show, so we'll see, I guess, but says that he was in a barbed wire match with him, broke his leg. What did he do? Got up, finished the match. He's a different animal than Jon Moxley has been facing up to this point. And I actually really... I didn't love the promo a ton, but I liked it. And he's just such a natural talker. Like, he is just one of the easiest people to listen to. So I feel like part of why I buy into it is just the way that he's able to talk about things. It's not the most justified. I think the issue I have with it isn't even him. The issue I have with it is he doesn't come across as like a day one guy. He doesn't come across as an egotistical guy. And he's certainly not the youngest guy in the back. So it seems so against Mox's original mission statement. But as far as what he's been given and what he's doing with it, I thought this was really good. I just don't feel like he should be set up in this role. I do think this is probably a way to get to the trios titles eventually being on Rated FTR and off of the champions who never fucking defend them, which drives me nuts. We'll start with Joe on this one. What did you think of what we got here? We also, of course, get a beatdown. We do have Pac back, which is nice. He did return here, which was great. But kind of the stuff that we're used to seeing. Joe, I want your thoughts on this. And do you think that Beth Phoenix might come out for Mariah May? Because I would freak out. Or not Mariah May, from Marina Shafir.
That's my hope after everything tonight. Especially where Cope had that moment with pulling Marina up on the ring. And then he's like, I can't do anything. And then that cost him to getting attacked. So I think you level the playing field with Beth coming in. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to. The promo itself felt like a typical Adam Copeland promo. The guy is full of grit, as he always talks about how much grit he has and how tough he is. I don't think he needs to put that over, because I think we all have seen him in the business long enough to know that he's a serious threat to Moxley, and he can be evil and sadistic and tough and all that stuff.
Yeah, the match that he got put out on, right? Like, kind of showed us that.
And I don't have much of an issue of what you said, him not being a day one guy, because I feel like you could just say, well, some of those day one guys came after Mox and they couldn't get the job done.
Okay, I can buy that.
Maybe that's one way to swing it.
I don't mind that. Like, the first guys had to swing at this and they missed. So now I'm stepping in. They should put that in the promo, though.
So
you shouldn't be telling me that. They should be telling me that.
The fact that it ended the way it did, just kind of like, usual beatdown.
Yeah, that's the part of this that is getting fatigued for me. But Ryan, how did you cope with this? Are you coping with this angle?
Just a land of cope. That's
a whole land of it, huh?
A whole land of it. So the positive guy, I enjoyed it. You're dead on. He's a natural speaker, which is why I really like him. He's that way. I think you have, actually, I'll tell you, Sami Zayn is probably my favorite. When Sami Zayn talks, it just sounds like a normal guy talking.
God, he's
so I love guys that, I love guys that can talk like that.
So it must be a Canadian thing. Him, Sammy, Kevin Owens.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
I actually think Kenny did a good job of it tonight, talking kind of normal, like when they're just talking like themselves, and that's your Canadian thing made me think of it. I'm going to just so first of all, the grit in him is all the stuff in between his joints that he's had to put in just to keep walking, but I liked the promo because I think, one, you're always trying to, in case someone doesn't know all you've been through, it's a reminder. Two, it wasn't I'm sadistic. It wasn't I've done everything you've done. It was the whole thing about the Death Riders is they beat you down until you can't move. They literally put the bag over Brian Danielson's head and like choked him out. Like their whole thing is we hurt you till you can't move. And his point is you can't do that to me. I have had the worst that can happen and I keep going. So I thought that was very on point with examples, not just like bravado being like, I broke my neck and I won a match. Like, what are we doing here? Against the legend. Like what's going so I liked it. The only thing I had an issue with is, and this is an issue I have with baby faces across all of wrestling. So they're gonna come out and you have FTR do their surprise attack, but you don't account for the fact that they have numbers. What are we doing here? Bring a weapon.
And also, like, they got taken out last week, so I guess it wasn't that bad of a beatdown. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the Death Riders, not that violent, I guess, because they were fine just a few days later. But yeah, that is annoying when they're like, most of us are going to be here. I guess you could say that Pac hadn't been around. So, like, you might not want to assume that he was there, but he was also just home for the holiday. So it's not like he got written out. But I did appreciate that Hobbs came down at the end of this, like to your point, to even out those numbers because he had just won. He's such a badass, man. So much fun. So much fun. I'm excited that because he was like cleared and then we did the cool comeback match and then he was kind of waffling like this is a good table setter for him. Good stuff. But let's move on to the ladies portion of the night. Harley Cameron should win every title. I'm sold. She should dethrone Mercedes. She should dethrone Athena. She should probably beat Mox at this point. She should beat Mariah May. She should win the Casino Gauntlet. This woman is hysterical. Like, Mariah May is here. She kind of just pats herself on the back a little bit or whatever, but who cares? Because Harley Cameron is here. And she keeps doing her I'm gonna one up your gimmick thing, and she's going to bring the wrath to Mariah May in a non-title match. I like that Mariah May said, I don't think it's gonna be a title match actually on Collision, but they're gonna give an appetizer. Harley with the very similar to Mariah May gear, the very similar to Mariah May presence. They're going to bring some hot girl graps to Collision. And Mariah May, I like that that's what gets Mariah May in. She's like not into the idea at first. And then Harley Cameron's like, what if it's just hot girl graps? And she's like, I'm in for hot girl graps, non-title hot girl graps, basically. I feel like when you look at like the biggest surprises in wrestling over 2024, Harley Cameron's right there. Like I was so impressed initially because I felt like she really grasped onto the things that wrestlers say is hard about wrestling ahead of some of the fundamentals even. And now that she's gotten some more reps under her belt, like I'm just so damn entertained every time she's on screen. Her continuing this glomming onto everybody's gimmick thing is just, it's brilliant because of the range that she has to be able to do it. Because you just believe that she believes her own bullshit 100%. Like the level of commitment that takes, especially in a segment this short, is unreal. So match of the year on Collision. You can have your Kenny versus your Gabe Kids all you want. You can have your Roxanne Perez versus Julia last night on NXT. Hot girl grabs going down on Collision with Harley Cameron and Mariah May. I'm looking forward to it. I'll go through kind of what we get for the next women's match, and we can review this all in a chunk, fellas. But we do have our three-way match. That's Toni Storm, Chris Statlander, and Willow Nightingale. We get the biggest thing in this. There's a spine buster with Toni Storm and Chris, and there's some other spots. There is a low blow to the lady parts that is done with an unintentional tandem offense from Willow and Toni Storm. But this ultimately ends with Willow hitting a German on Chris, who hits a German on Storm, which was really, really fun here. But the Saturday Night Fever by Chris Statlander to Toni Storm. This was another thing that felt like a surprise that had some gusto behind it. The match probably could have gone into another gear. It did have 9 minutes and 50 seconds, so I appreciate that it got some time, especially for a triple threat. I thought it was very obvious Toni Storm was going to win, but they gave it to Chris. And I like that immediately after this, we get our rookie Toni Storm being like, I guess I'm just not ready. I don't have what it takes, which gives us the opening, I think, for timeless Toni Storm to return at the Gauntlet. So a really clever way to get two competitors from this in there. And Chris going on, I think, probably gives Willow the leverage to be like, if that bitch is in it, I'm going to be in it. So I think all three of these women very well could end up there. Match was pretty good. It's just with these three, I have very high expectations. And I do feel like there is an overall problem in the women's division where we're kind of bottlenecked, right? Like it's the same women around these titles. It's Willow, it's Chris, it's Mercedes, it's Mariah, and it's Toni. Now that's 5 women, but it's time to start getting some other women in the mix on this, I think. Joe, we'll go to you. What did you think of our Hot Girl Grap segment and our women's match for the evening?
All 4 Hot Girl Graps. Harley, you kind of scratched the surface of what she could be when she was when she had the time with QTV. You got a little bit more of her personality. Then, when she kind of got mixed in with the Outcast, it became more like, that'd be appetizer of QTV. Now we're kind of on the entree part of things, and I think the dessert of her run in AEW will be like when she, if they put a belt on her of some sort, like some kind of title. And doesn't have to be the main title, but anything. When she stops trying to be someone else and just like really just becomes her own character. So all for that. Her in-ring stuff has been really good lately too, so that's been nice to see. The 3-way match here, same thing. I thought Toni was going to win. I'm glad they kind of teased us as far as why they didn't go with that. If all 3 of them end up in the Gauntlet, though, what was the point of this match? Other than making, Toni time more. I mean, it seemed very convoluted to get to that point.
Well, all 3 of them aren't ending up in the match. Timeless Toni Storm is not this rookie. I don't know who you're talking about, but I understand your point that it makes the match null and void. I'm just assuming Willow's going to be in it. I could be wrong. But you're right, is that it's kind of weird in 1 week to have it be a vehicle that all 3 of them end up there anyway. But Ryan, who is the hottest girl on here to talk about hot girl graps, almost a half a Mercedes move there. I appreciate that.
I didn't want to hurt anyone with the full thing. People can only take so much.
I understand. And you only want to give so much away for free. You know what I mean? You got to pay well something. But what did you think of our Hot Girl Grab segment and then also this triple threat?
So I'd like to say you and I were early in on Harley. Jericho Cruise. We were in on her before the Jericho Cruise, but then the Jericho Cruise cemented just that she is naturally funny. Like it wasn't just her
role. Hysterical, yeah.
It just wasn't her role in QT TV that made her funny. It was like, no, this is just her. She has great comedic timing, which now with her improvement in the ring has made her like a complete wrestler. I
think those Hammerstein shows went a long way in establishing that because she had like a couple of she had a Joshi opponent and she had it was less. She's always funny, but it was more like I'm a wrestler who's here to wrestle a match with some funny things in it. So to your point, yeah, that in-ring improvement coming along as well.
When she's standing there, I guess she was standing. She goes, and she's not saying it, and she screams. I just like Jesus Christ, like the timing on that. I enjoyed the match. Now were you guys debating that if all 3 were in the Casino Gauntlet? Did I miss a line somewhere?
No, because Chris went, and I'm assuming Toni Storm, because of this post-match interview that we get of her saying she's just not ready as the rookie, means timeless Toni Storm is going to show up in the Casino Gauntlet.
I was like that because this was just for the number 1 seed. It wasn't for a spot in the match.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. So that's a fair point. This is for
in. This was just for the number 1 seed, which I like. It's a story. Again, doesn't hurt Willow and definitely doesn't hurt Toni to lose because triple threats have that same thing and Toni's interview afterwards knocked it out of the park with she played downtrodden so well. It was awesome. But I really enjoyed this. I'm with you that it does feel like they're starting to bottleneck. But you know what would solve the bottleneck issue? If, okay, we've had Chris versus Mercedes for a while, but we really like Chris Statlander. She's one of our biggest stars. You know what we do is we put someone else against Mercedes and just put Chris in a non-title feud and feature that heavily. Solve all that problem.
That's where the lack of collision, I think, is gonna hurt, and that I think
Rampage?
it'll. Yes, sorry. They'll have to find somewhere else to put it. But I am feeling better about the women's division because it does feel like Mercedes is on track now. Like, it did not feel like she was on track. She is on track now. I don't know what the fuck is going on with Camille. I know that's something that Sean's looking into as well, because it's very weird that she up and evaporated. But I think it's more the world title picture because we've had this inevitability that Tony is going to come back, and because Mariah May's intermittent feuds have not been very strong. That's where it really kind of hurts, is like those intermittent feuds not being there. But you think like Tay Bello's on her way back. I'm sure Ruby Soho will be on her way back when she's comfortable enough in where she is in motherhood to return. So like, you're going to have to do something. Because there's like a lot of big names that you need there. And like the fact that Deonna Purrazzo is never on Dynamite is stupid.
Why you could have Deonna and Chris Statlander feuding. Heel face. It's a perfect feud. They could go on up through a pay-per-view, majorly featured. It'd be amazing.
I love that idea. Maybe set that up in the Casino Gauntlet. But we are headed to our main event segment here. That was our final match of the evening, but the return for Kenny Omega is wonderful. And it's an emotional one before it gets cut off by Don Callis, which we kind of talked about at the beginning of the show. But he's here. He's back for the real deal. And everything he talked about is true from what I heard, that he has 4 separate stints in the hospital for about a month each. Every time that he was trying to come back, he talks about diverticulitis. And I was like, not great when diverticulitis is getting more booze than our world champion as a heel, but I'll take it. But he had 2 feet of his spleen removed from him. My favorite part of this was he said, Doc, how long will the recovery be? And when can I get back in the ring? And basically the doctor says, you'll be lucky enough to live a normal life, much less get back to wrestling, much less get back to the Kenny Omega you used to know or used to be. And I was like, the doc knows ball. If he knows, like the Kenny Omega you used to be, the doctor knows he's one of the best wrestlers in the world. So, but he basically says, if I don't have wrestling, what do I have? Like, I was wondering if this was even a safe decision at all. I would say based on his match with Gabe Kidd, as long as he feels good, he certainly hasn't lost a step. I could not believe how explosive his offense was having come back for the first time here. But he says he's not concerned about money or pride or revenge this time around. And out comes Don Callis to interrupt. I will say I didn't love this initially, but it got heat because people just wanted to hear Kenny talk sincerely. So touche. That's how you get real heat, I think. Not like with shitty booking or whatever. Moments like that. Moments like Ricochet using Swerve's music. That's my preference, at least. But I also love that Omega just immediately goes to chase off Don Callis. Brian Cage, aka the Brawny Paper Towel Man, comes out with Lance Archer to ambush them. And Kyle Fletcher coming out is when I started to be like, maybe I'm more in on this than I thought, because Kenny Omega versus Kyle Fletcher could be very fun. We get the chair here, but Will Ospreay coming out. And we get the stare down that we kind of talked about at the beginning of the show. We kind of covered this already, but if you guys wanted to give any other thoughts, I felt like the stare down between Will and Kenny is kind of when I was like, man, we are at an all-timer roster health moment in AEW right now. I'm intrigued, especially if you also want to keep Will away from the title picture for a while. He's so inevitable, and he puts on these match of the year contenders every time he comes out there. Like, realistically, you know, how do you keep away from that? This little program with Kenny ain't a bad way to go. Joe, let's start with you. What did you, I know we kind of covered this already, but any other thoughts that you want to tie up with this now that we ran through the segment more properly?
I'm trying to see who else will come and help Osprey and Kenny take on
Are
the
you gonna?
Chaos family. You know, if I have time.
You don't even have time for this show.
Maybe
sorry, I can't be there for the Mark Order pod next week. I gotta go help Kenny and Will. Typical Joe.
I haven't had diverticulitis and I don't look that good, so I don't know. Like
he looks fantastic, honestly. God bless the guy. He looks like he's been in the best health since he's been in AEW.
So I mean, there's a lot of ways that this story can go with the Chaos family. It's fun to listen to him say that he's not in for revenge and all this stuff. And then as soon as Chaos comes out without thinking about it, he jumps him.
I thought that was pretty cute too. Big G saying Kota Ibushi. I would assume Kota Ibushi is on the list of people that will be helping out if he's healthy. Poor Kota, like just came over and immediately was in health harm's way. But I'm right.
I mean, you can put
God, I know both of these guys are poor Golden Lovers have been really going through it. Ryan, any final thoughts here as we're rounding out Dynamite?
This speech felt funny better because we had just seen him have a match of the year contend all 3 or 4 days, however many days ago. It just made it feel like when he said I can't do the things I used to, but this Kenny, it's like, I don't know, you just did a lot. I don't know what
Yeah, you said I can't do all the same things I used to do. I'm like, I saw most of the things you used to do in a match 4 days ago, though.
Yeah, you're still very good.
You're still the best.
I kind of they've kind of managed to pull off with him. Well, they didn't really need to. He was faced before he got hurt. But hurt, I mean sick, and with a very serious thing. I mean, it's amazing how many wrestlers get this. It almost killed Brock Lesnar. Sean Waltman has it. It's
brutal.
Thing.
It's awful.
Yeah.
It's an awful thing to deal with.
But my thing is, he was faced, but him saying I'm not going to be for revenge. It kind of gives him a nice clean slate. Whatever they he kind of comes out and says whatever they want to do with him, they can do. Now, clearly, Callis is old news, but I don't blame him for attacking Callis. That's not revenge. Callis is just an asshole.
Callis came out for him, too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Did you really just say clean slate with Kenny Omega?
I pun when I don't even mean it. I'm like the Dean from Community.
There you go. I think that was also... I was actually very impressed by how the crowd reacted at that match in New Japan too, because Kenny's a heel there. That was to make Gabe Kidd a babyface after Gabe Kidd has been a hard heel for the majority of his past 2 years with all the War Dog stuff. And it was very fun seeing the crowd go from the Terminator clap organically, without being prompted, to booing the hell out of Kenny and Kenny's post-match comments. So I think part of the I'm not here for money, I'm not here for revenge stuff is to say I'm a face, just to clarify. But I think it is also, I think his whole arc is going to be that. Because Okada stepped in with the Young Bucks while he was out, right? I think everything is going to be for revenge. But I think him saying it's not for revenge, it's not for money, Okada comes out with the Okada Bucks, right? This is all probably leading to Kenny versus Okada 5, which they hinted at right at All In. But I think we're going to have some storytelling to get us there. If they choose to go that route, they might hotshot him to the title with the way things are going. So we will see. But this was a longer episode for us, but it's so funny because on my rundown, I have so many less segments listed, and it makes me feel so good that it was less is more on this one. It was a big... let's dive into what they gave us instead of let's review every little thing that they threw our way. Really, really refreshing pacing. This was another one that got a little longer in the middle, but it was much closer to those. I looked up and it's 10 o'clock already. Holy crap episode. So appreciate that too. But before we get out of here, we're going to plug all our shit. It's been a while since we did this, fellas, especially the three of us in the same room finally. Joe, since you are going to be your older and wiser next week, since you are abandoning us next week for one last time, I guess. Plug your shit.
You might not be here next week.
I know, but that's inconvenient to my narrative.
Okay, that's fair. Follow me on social media at _Asian Joe. And then also, I haven't done a serial review blog in a while, but you can read some of the ones I have done. I know, running away from the grind. The link to that is in my bio on my social media platforms.
Ryan, the voice of the Mark Order. Where can people find us? Where can they find you? Except for how I posted on Instagram today, but no big deal.
Yeah, I always forget about Instagram. I'm not an Instagram guy. You can find me here every Wednesday. You know, I don't know who's going to be with me, but you can find me, except for those times that I'm not, but still. All socials at Mark Order Pod. You can follow my history blog, hereforhistory.com, at _hereforhistory on Twitter, at hereforhistory on Blue Sky. I haven't posted in a while. I have stuff almost done. Holidays weren't as carefree as I expected because family visited.
That happens to the best of us, especially around the holidays. But you can find me at Miss Kate Fabe on social media. Tomorrow I have a video coming out that is 5 things that I think both AEW and WWE could both get better at. So shared weaknesses of all 5 programs. Some of them were addressed tonight. So the fact that I recorded this yesterday doesn't necessarily fit, but we'll see how it goes. And you can also support us by leaving a thumbs up on this video on the way out. You can also, if you see our logo on the background here and you're like, oh my God, I love it so much. I wish I could wear it. I wish I could wear your backgrounds, but only like one piece of your background at a time. Did I stall to give Ryan enough time? We're about to find out. I sure did. Well, you can buy our t-shirt.
Joe did it. That's not Ryan at all. Joe had it up.
Joe, of course. See, this is why it hurts so much when you're out, man. But we do have our Mark Order t-shirts that you can buy. You should buy one for every day of the week, and then you'll have a backup. So, like, if you buy 8 of them, you'll have one for every day of the week, and then when one gets worn out, you can substitute it off your shelf. So you've got our logo, you got the pocket square one. The 2 on the right hand side are front and back. That's why they're a little bit more expensive. And the 2 on the left, just our straight up logo. If you are on Pro Wrestling Tees and you need to beat a shipping charge, or you're like, I have to support you right now, please feel free to go to the Mark Order Podcast shop on there and pick up a t-shirt or 2. We would very, very much appreciate it. But we are going to get out of here. Exciting episode of Dynamite to most of us. Ryan will be here next week. Joe will run from the grind. I am listed as day-to-day at this moment. Probably not going to be here, but I will confirm. But you never know who's going to stop in our absence. Usually it's the Between Two Beards guys who are wonderful. So please check them out. We are going to get out of here. Have a safe and wonderful rest of your week. A goodbye. And a good night. Feels nice to do that again.
I put the outro overlay on, and then
This concludes the Mark Order Podcast. We now